All right, everyone, grab a seat and let's get settled. Welcome back to the lecture hall. I'm thrilled to see so many of you here today. As a biologist, I spend a lot of time in the lab analyzing data, but my absolute favorite thing to do is share the sheer, mind-blowing brilliance of the animal kingdom with all of you. You know, we humans spend so much time marveling at our own tech, but today we're going to look at how millions of years of evolution have engineered materials, sensors, and structural anatomy that completely outpace our best modern inventions. We're going to dive into some wild genetic links, look at extreme physical adaptations, and use some everyday analogies to decode highly complex biological functions. So, get your notebooks ready and let's jump right in.
Here's a quick look at our syllabus for today's session. We've got 4 main sections. First, natural anatomy and biological materials. Second, evolution and genetic lineage. Third, biometric sensors versus human technology. And finally, adaptation and hunting strategies.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, Natural Anatomy and Biological Materials. When we look at nature, the sheer efficiency of how animals engineer complex materials from basic building blocks is just astonishing. You guys all know keratin, right? It's the exact same protein forming the hair on your head and the nails on your fingers. But what's truly fascinating is how biology scales and reuses these materials. Take a rhinoceros horn. Unlike a cow's horn, it doesn't have a bony core inside, none at all. It is uniquely made entirely of densely packed keratin. It's kind of like a biological 3D printer that uses the exact same flimsy plastic filament to print a soft, flexible wire, and then turns around and uses that same stuff to print a rock-solid, impenetrable battering ram. Nature's material efficiency is just unmatched. And speaking of taking a physical beating, look at the staggering number on the board. 20. That is the number of times a woodpecker can mechanically strike wood in a single second. Their beak acts exactly like a high-speed pneumatic drill you'd see on a construction site, mechanically absorbing extreme shock. If they're striking 20 times a second, that adds up to an astonishing 8,000 to 12,000 strikes in a single day. Literally, our best human-engineered drill bits would just wear down and snap under that kind of repetitive friction, but biological regeneration keeps the woodpecker going day after day.
Animal physical traits so often compared directly to human-made products. For example, look at the hippopotamus. They secrete this red, oily fluid that a lot of people mistake for blood or sweat, but in reality, it acts as a medical-grade, bioengineered antibiotic and a moisturizing sunscreen. It perfectly protects their skin from the scorching sun and bacterial infections. And then we have squirrels. Notice their front teeth are orange? While that's not a stain, it's a highly specialized enamel coating. Because their teeth never stop growing and are constantly worn down by gnawing on hard nuts, that orange layer acts as a built-in industrial-strength hard coating. It's vastly superior to the strongest ceramics we can manufacture in a lab.
All right, let's see who's paying attention in the back. Time for a quick pop quiz to test your comprehension on the materials we just covered. Which animal produces a built-in topical antibiotic, and what protein makes up a rhino's horn? Think about it. Yep, you got it. The hippo secretes the antibiotic fluid, and the rhino's horn is pure keratin. Spot on.
Moving right along to Section 2, Evolution and Genetic Lineage.
Now let's observe how evolutionary lineage creates some wildly surprising genetic relatives over millions of years. When mapping genetic trees, we sometimes see just complete, sheer contrast. On one side, we have the terrifying Tyrannosaurus rex, arguably the most famous apex predator to ever walk the earth. On the other side, we have modern farmyard chickens and ostriches. As a biologist looking at evolutionary genetics, I can tell you definitively that the T-Rex's direct closest living genetic descendants are exactly those birds. So, seriously, the next time you see a chicken pecking at the dirt, remember, you are looking at the distant, highly evolved cousin of a giant, terrifying dinosaur.
We see this genetic misdirection again right here. Compare the tiny rodent-like elephant shrew on the left to the massive, towering elephant on the right. Just looking at it, you'd think the shrew is just a mouse with a weirdly long nose, right? Well, genetic sequencing reveals that despite its tiny size, the elephant shrew is actually genetically closer to true elephants than it is to other shrews. This shared genetic lineage explains its signature flexible trunk, which it uses to expertly sniff out and hunt insects. It's basically a pocket-sized elephant.
And evolution doesn't just change size, it entirely reshapes anatomy to guarantee survival. Just look at the red handfish. Yes, it's a fish, but you absolutely will not see it swimming gracefully like a typical trout. Instead, it literally walks along the ocean floor. Over countless generations, its fins have biologically evolved and specialized to act exactly like hands. It's a perfect example of nature utilizing whatever genetic material is available to completely conquer a specific ecological niche.
All right, active recall time. Here's our second quiz to lock in those shocking evolutionary lineages. Name the apex predator dinosaur whose closest living descendants are pecking around in farmyards today. Shout it out. Yes, exactly, the T-Rex.
Okay, let's jump into Section 3, Biometric Sensors versus Human Technology.
We are going to directly compare complex animals' sensory organs to the modern human tech we rely on every single day. When we think of biometric scanners, we usually think of the fingerprint readers on our smartphones, right? But nature invented this tech millions of years ago. A dog's nose print is entirely unique, exactly like a human fingerprint. And speaking of fingerprints, the koala has prints so incredibly similar to a human's that they have famously mixed up real-world crime scene investigations. No joke. Moving along, look at the narwhal's horn. It's actually an elongated tooth, but unlike our teeth, which are hard on the outside and sensitive on the inside, the narwhal's tusk is basically an inside-out sensory probe. It's hard on the inside and completely covered in millions of sensitive nerve endings on the outside, allowing it to read the ocean's chemistry like a high-tech environmental sensor.
So the crucial takeaway here is that animal biology often solves complex engineering problems entirely differently than we do. Take optical sensors, our cameras. We have round eyeballs that rotate in our sockets. Owls do not. Owls have fixed internal eye tubes. It's like having a pair of binoculars. Actually, scratch that. It's exactly like having high-powered binoculars permanently bolted inside your skull. It's phenomenal for zoom, but it means they have to physically turn their entire head to pan the camera, so to speak. Then we have the starfish, which takes a completely distributed sensor network approach. Instead of a centralized face with eyes, they have clusters of light-sensitive cells at the very tips of their arms, giving them 360-degree, continuous environmental awareness.
Time for our third comprehension check. Let's see who remembers the forensics lesson. Which animal leaves a biometric print so incredibly similar to humans that it could actually mix up a crime scene investigation? The answer is the koala. Great job, guys. Let's move into our final module, Section 4, Adaptation and Hunting Strategies.
This is where all that anatomical engineering truly gets put to the ultimate survival test. Let's start with a staggering metric of biological efficiency, 35,000. That is the number of termites and ants an echidna can consume in a single day. They don't have teeth, but they really don't need them. They possess a super long, highly sticky tongue that operates exactly like an organic rapid-fire vacuum cleaner. It effortlessly probes deep into insect mounds, seamlessly harvesting tens of thousands of calories without a single chew. And this next one brilliantly illustrates cooperative intelligence. Look at the strategic steps of the humpback whale's bubble net strategy. When they hunt, they don't just mindlessly chase fish, they engineer a sophisticated trap. Step 1, they form a tightly coordinated group. Step 2, they swim in a circle deep beneath a school of fish. Step 3, they blow air from their blowholes, creating a literal cylinder of bubbles that rapidly rises to the surface. To the fish, this wall of bubbles looks completely solid and inescapable. It's an organic, cooperative trawl net made out of literal thin air, designed to trap their prey before the whales lunge up through the center. It is an absolute masterpiece of tactical engineering.
But remember, extreme adaptation scales all the way down to the microscopic level. A flea can jump over 200 times its own body length. To put that extreme physical power into human perspective, if you possessed this kind of biological tech in your legs, you wouldn't just be able to dunk a basketball, you could easily leap directly over the Empire State Building in a single bound. The tension stored in their tiny legs acts exactly like a coiled steel spring, instantly releasing massive kinetic energy.
But perhaps the ultimate adaptation in all of biology belongs to the immortal jellyfish. The immortal jellyfish goes through a life cycle that completely defies typical biology. When an adult immortal jellyfish faces extreme environmental stress, starvation, or a severe injury, it doesn't just die. It hits a biological reset button. Like rebooting a frozen computer, it reverts its cellular structure back into a young, undifferentiated blob of tissue, and then completely regrows into a youthful state. It is, quite literally, an endless loop of biological recycling. All right, let's pose our final section quiz for today's lecture. Challenge yourselves to recall the apex predator we just discussed. Which massive marine mammal uses trapped air to build an inescapable net?
Think about the steps. Yep, it's the humpback whale. Which brings us to the end of our lecture today. As you pack up your notes, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. We've seen natural sunscreens, built-in biometric scanners, inside-out sensors, and animals that can literally reset their own aging process. So how much does human technology still have to learn from millions of years of animal evolution? As biologists, it tells us that nature is, without a doubt, the greatest engineer we will ever study. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you all in the next one.